Good morning. My name is Mungandi. I'm a geography instructor at Kwantlen Polytechnic University in British Columbia, and I'm a climatologist by training. I graduated with a Master of Science from Simon Fraser University in Canada. Then I moved over to RMIT and studied under Amy Griffin there, and I got my Master's of Geospatial Science, and I'm now working on my PhD at University of Southern Queensland, and I'm dealing with land cover and climate change and ecosystem response. And this talk here is based off of the work that I did for my dissertation at RMIT, and it's about usability evaluation of a web map that has been devised by a research team in New Zealand, and it looks at land use and land cover change over a period of time, and it's intended for the public to be able to use. Now, the Research Institute in New Zealand, who created this web map, called the Manaaki Whenua Landcare Research, and they are a Crown Institute who are mandated to investigate the health of the land in all aspects. And so they developed this web map viewer for visualizing this change in terms of cover and usage. However, at the time, they were pressed to roll it out, but they hadn't fully tested it. So my work was to see whether this application was usable. Really what this web map viewer does is it has a server and land use at different epochs, and you can query that database through an application, either on a desktop or any other mobile device, and then it can generate for you maps that show that change that has occurred in terms of different types of land cover, and it can also give you some graphics in it. So it's intended for public use in general. And their classification is pretty good. It is at 1 hectare, and so they have tiled up this data, and they serve it to you in small payloads, so it's quite efficient when you are using it online. This here is a snapshot of what the graphic looks like. It might be slightly different because this particular one we used for testing. So as you may notice probably up there, there's a menu there, a button for navigating from question to question. That is not there presently as it is installed. But the key thing that you will notice over here is that in the graphic here, there's this map extent which shows different types of land cover. And this is just a map extent which you pan to. It might be a region of your own interest, and then it will show you that. And over here, it gives you the graphic which breaks down the proportions of different types of land cover that you have in that map extent. And as well up top there, you may see that button there. You can choose a particular theme that you want. In this extent, presently what you are seeing is everything that is shown in that particular area. But you could narrow it down, for example, to vineyards if you wanted and just focused on that. As well, over here, you have a time slider. So we have 4 different time periods there. And so you can go backwards and compare. You can go backwards and compare, or you can come forwards and compare what change has occurred between any 2 periods of your own interest. And just a flavor of what is happening here. If I toggle here, you will notice that something is changing in there. What really is happening is that I'm moving from one time period to another, and I can show you, for example, here, I have vineyards. I can show you what vineyards were in that particular year compared to this year here that is selected. So you can go back and forth. If you like, you can start from what was in the past and what it has become presently. So it's pretty cool. I haven't seen much of this type anywhere else. Now, we set out to investigate whether we could improve the efficiency and the accuracy and perhaps the feel of what the people experience by changing the interface. So we asked some research questions here. We wondered whether if we designed two interfaces and we changed, for example, the symbolization, or we added text there, we wanted to know whether that would improve accuracy or efficiency in terms of performing thematic tasks. Those would be questions asking what change has occurred in terms of time, which period, when did it happen, how long did it take, that kind of questions. As well, we wanted to find whether that change could also influence spatial efficiency or accuracy. The questions about where, which direction, from where to. And as well, we also wanted to know if how quickly people perform these tasks would be also influenced by this switch in the interface. Of course, lastly, we wanted to get feedback from the users to see whether they were very comfortable with using this tool. And so we chose some metrics, and these are based on the ISO standard 9241-210. And so we were interested in the grayed out areas there. So we wanted to look at accuracy to give us an idea of how effective this tool was. We also wanted to look at the completion times to give us a sense of efficiency. As well, we wanted to look at user experience. So this was a set of questions that attempt to measure how the users were comfortable with the device after interacting with it, or what their affective mood was towards the interface. And then we devised an online study, and this was conducted in Qualtrics. And so we put up a questionnaire and loaded it on a desktop. And then in that questionnaire, in performing tasks and in responding to some of the questions, the participants provided us with their basic biodata, and they also gave us their open feedback, which we summarized and generated some demographics and used some of that open feedback to make recommendations. As well, they performed some tasks, and we pulled out of that their accuracy and their time and put it through some two-way analysis of variance and came up with our effectiveness and efficiency. And finally, we also asked them a set of questions, standard questions that are typically used in the system usability scale, and that gave us a sense to be able to rate the performance, or the responses rather, of the users about the map viewer. And in that as well, sorry, I'll move on. This is what the questionnaire looks like. It had 3 parts to it. The first part, of course, collects participant data, and then the second part had tasks which the participants would perform. And these tasks, as I said earlier, they would be broken up into either thematic tasks or spatial tasks or temporal tasks. And then the last part there was just eliciting for data on their experience. So it was a standard SUS questionnaire, and at the very end of it, we stuck one question, which was asking them to give us their open feedback. Now, the testing itself was conducted by, first of all, selecting the metrics, which were, of course, efficiency, accuracy, and experience. And then we turned those into tasks. Again, these would be the thematic, spatial, and temporal tasks. And we had 2 prototypes, as I said, of the device. The top part there shows you the time slide, and that's where we focused a lot, because we thought maybe combining spatial tasks with temporal tasks on one interface would complicate how users interacted with the system. So we switched it up a little bit. The top one there, as you can see, has the symbolization, which shows you which direction to go to if you want to make comparisons. And the bottom one there uses text. So it was very simple, but yet interesting in that sense. And then from the tasks there, those crossing arrows there symbolize that we would, for participants that we got, there happened to be 38 that were recruited, the system would randomly assign which version they take. And so they could either go version A at the top or version B at the top. So, and we implemented that. Of course, initially, when we designed this, we had a group of users that we asked to have a look at it. So we tested it internally before we implemented it. And of course, from that, then you collect your data and calculate the metrics that we desire. And at that point, we are ready to make the comparisons, whether we think version A is better than version B, and then fan out the one which we like better. These here are numbers that give us an idea of what kind of participants we have. The first one about education there really tells us that most of our participants were very highly educated, postgraduates, PhD people, masters, and data analysts and that type of people. So their feedback was very valuable in that regard. However, it was a little biased. We would have loved to see more people that have lower education as well. And we also wanted to know where these people are coming from in New Zealand, and we had quite a good representation from across New Zealand in this sample that we collected. Although, of course, you might notice that places like Wellington, and plenty Bay there area, there would be more people, and Christchurch, so on and so forth. Now, what is even more interesting is that these participants were actually very computer savvy. Some of them are actually power users of special technologies as well. And they were employed from most sectors like universities, research places, municipalities, and we also had a few people from the business sector. We would have loved to capture more from the Maori groups there as well. Our results in terms of effectiveness and efficiency, they show that across the 2 versions, there was no real statistical significance that is caused by the versions in terms of the performance, and there were no mixed effects at all. However, we found that tasks might have been significant, particularly in terms of how they affected effectiveness. You may see from the graphs over here that I don't know if that points out clearly for you, but spatial scores for effectiveness were rather low, and for temporal tasks, it was much, much better. And in terms of efficiency, you notice that temporal could be executed in a much shorter time. And then we looked at the usability scores. Obviously, whether you compare just one version, version A or version B, or combining both of them, we were still lower than the percentile that was given in the database for the SUS. And that should not be surprising because that database does not have much of land use, land cover map viewers contained in there. And so there were slightly different types of devices that we're comparing. As well, we noted that this device was still in development, whereas all the database that we are comparing against it were already rolled out and actively being used. And as far as the feedback that came goes, we noticed, surprisingly, to me at least, that there was not much mention, or if any at all, in terms of experiencing difficulty because of the complexity of the tasks. And we thought that would be an issue because it was combining both temporal and spatial dimensions, but that wasn't the case. However, most of the respondents were clamoring for more functionality in the system. They were asking that they wished they could get that map view and then take it and use it for something else. They wanted to be able to download it. They wanted to be able to add value to it in their scientific work, so on and so forth. Some of them wanted to know what the quality of that data was, a little bit more history, metadata about it as well. We took all that into consideration and we made our final conclusions. Obviously, for people that are so savvy, for people that frequently use this kind of technology, the level of effectiveness was surprisingly low. And however, we were also surprised that they were able to execute these tasks so very fast. And the explanation for that is still unknown to us. And we have concluded now that spatial tasks, which we had supposed that would be easier to perform than temporal tasks, actually are the ones that are more difficult. So if there is any further design and any reason to start factoring in these tasks, maybe focus should shift towards those spatial areas. Our last recommendation is that in the process of redesigning this tool, consideration must be given for heterogeneous users. We don't expect that in the public there will be as many educated people or as many computer savvy people as the ones we had in our sample. So we'd love to catch the whole breadth. But the biggest question, lastly, is what balance does the Landcare Research Institute hit? Do they go to the scale where you have things like visualizations from municipalities where you have medium functionality, or do you really grow this thing to the level of the Google Earth engine platform, which has very high functionality? So that's a question that we can't answer at this stage. Finally, I would like to thank the people at Landcare in New Zealand who facilitated the recruiting of our participants. And if you have any questions, you are interested to learn about this web mapper, I've given the email address there for the chief scientist there, whom you may freely contact. And if you want to have a look and have a feel of what this device looks like, that is the address there. Thank you.